Hey Hobby Halloween fans, welcome back to the channel. Today we're continuing our build series for the Scary Pirate prop. In this episode we're building the Pneumatic Drop Panel. The Scary Pirate prop will consist of two mechanisms, a drop panel mech and the other is a lunging pirate skelly that will be built in an upcoming video. So be sure that you're subscribed to the channel to be notified when that comes out. Now let's get into the drop panel build. To check out what parts of the old mech could be reused, I did a quick restoration and found flaws in its mechanism. First, the drop panel itself was overbuilt and too heavy. The stiffening of the panel to keep it flat is a good idea, but as you will see, there are other ways to achieve this. Secondly, the attachment to the cylinder of the drop panel was screwed into wood, and it was relying upon the connection strength of the furring strips, which are soft pine wood. After a few tests of the mechanism dropping, it completely broke apart. This drop panel must undergo a complete makeover, so I will get the mech on the workbench and take it apart to start over with a new plan. The first thing I need to do is remake the drop panel. This panel measures 24 inches wide by 26 inches high. To ensure the panel does not bind itself within the rails, I intentionally reduced the width of the panel approximately 1/16 or so of an inch. For stability and rigidity, I will laminate two pieces of masonite together. The rear panel will be cut to a shorter width so that only the front panel will ride within the rails. Wood glue will be evenly distributed using a scrap piece of masonite as a spreader. I find that applying slightly more glue than usual is needed to compensate for masonite's absorbency. Additional adhesive is applied as needed to achieve thorough coverage up to the marked guidelines. The second panel will then be positioned onto the adhesive, forming the reverse side of the drop panel. Note that I'm gluing the rough surfaces of both masonite panels facing each other to enhance the adhesive bond. Finally, I'll use these paint cans as weights to maintain pressure while the assembly cures overnight. The pneumatic parts for this prop build were donated by Fright Props. Links are in the show notes. The cylinder used in this mech has a 24-inch stroke length with a 1 1/16 bore diameter. I will attach the foot of the cylinder to the bottom of the mech. I mark the center line of the mechanism and the center of the drop panel with a straight edge. This will ensure that I line up the cylinder to the center of the mechanism and the panel. I'm using this angled aluminum to hold the rod end of the cylinder to make sure it's level and square to the mechanism. The hardware for mounting the cylinder is a split clevis, and I will align the center of the cylinder to the layout line and attach the clevis with 4 washer head screws. I will use this 22-inch piece of angled aluminum to fasten the rod end of the cylinder using 2 nuts, one on each side. I marked a center line on the aluminum angle to line it up to the center of the drop panel. I'm about 1 inch down from the top of the panel, so I'm not too close to the edge when I drill the holes into the panel. I want to put that in there so that it won't move. And I'm going to go on the other side. And once you have 2 points, it'll be pinned in place, then it won't move. Then the center ones are easier. That. Now I'm going to take all of this off and I'm going to clean up these holes. So we want to make sure that we countersink these because these we want these bolts to sit below the surface just a little bit. That'll be good enough. The aluminum angle will be attached to the panel using 4 flush mount 1/4 screws and nylon lock nuts. The screws I had were a bit long, so I trimmed the screws to make them flat. I built the mech frame out of 1x3 select pine, which is much sturdier than furring strips, but more affordable than hardwood. The vertical rails in the mechanism have a 1/4 inch deep groove that were cut with a straight 1/4 inch bit on my router table. The masonite panel is 1/8 of an inch thick, so the groove provides ample play to prevent binding. The groove is positioned 3/8 of an inch from the edge. It is critical that the rails are parallel to each other to prevent the panel from falling out or binding. There are 3 horizontal 1x3 spanning the width of the mech to keep the rails parallel to each other. There is one at the top above where the panel is raised. Another one is situated in the middle when the panel is lowered, and the third placed at the base of the mechanism where the cylinder is attached. Following a commenter's suggestion, I used paste wax in the rail grooves since I had some already in my workshop. Although I have not noticed any discernible difference, likely because I kept the tolerances generous, I applied the wax as a precaution. The subject of connecting and working with pneumatics were already covered in 2 prior videos on this channel, DIY Pneumatic Prop Tutorial Part 1 and DIY Pneumatic Props, the ultimate how to build props Part 2. Links are in the description below. Please watch these videos if you need detailed instructions. However, in this video I will provide an overview. I'm installing the right angle push-on connectors on the cylinder ports. I will tighten them only a quarter turn past snug to avoid stripping the threads. Otherwise, you'll get an air leak that you can't fix. Next, I will install the fittings on the solenoid valve. There are 3 male push-on connectors that are installed into ports A, B, and P. Since these fittings already have the Teflon tape on them, no more is required. Then there are 2 adjustable exhaust mufflers installed into ports S and R. These exhaust mufflers do not need Teflon tape since their purpose is to let the air escape the valve anyway. Again, same caution is advised. Only tighten these fittings a quarter turn past snug to prevent thread damage. I want the 12-volt wiring facing down, so I will loosen this nut and flip the coil the other direction, then retighten the nut. The cylinder ports are connected using 1/4-inch tubing. The longest run will be approximately measured, allowing for additional slack. Then the shortest hose will be measured and cut in the same way. The solenoid will be mounted on the same side as the cylinder's ports, and making sure the fittings and hoses do not extend beyond the edge of the frame. The tubing will be secured to the cylinder with a couple of zip ties. Later in this video, you will see that I lay the tubing down flat in line with the cylinder. Not only does it appear neater, but it also prevents the tubing from being caught into or ripped out accidentally. That's the advantage of right angle connectors. I'll connect the air and power to the solenoid for a quick test to make sure the drop panel mech is working. With that test successfully run, we move on to the next step. The rectangular hole cut in the wall flat is 19 inches wide by 25 inches high. It is centered horizontally in the wall flat, and vertically it is 56 inches from the floor to the center of the portrait opening. Here I've laid the wall flat on the workbench to attach the mech to it. Mounting the mech proved more difficult than I expected. There were 3 separate attempts made before I got it right. Rather than leaving these attempts out of the video, I will include them to show you what the challenges were and how I finally resolved them. This is my first attempt. I will be using 2-inch double-wide corner braces on the top and bottom of the mech. After the wall flat was stood up, I realized instantly that I had an issue.
Room for this portrait to go on there. I plan to put the plexiglass. That is a tight fit. That is a tight fit.
The groove in the rails allowed a space of 3/8 of an inch, but it wasn't enough to allow the portrait and the plexiglass to pass freely between the drop panel and the wall flat. In my second attempt, I made risers out of 1x3 material with a step in it. While I like this approach better for mounting purposes, the rails would register the step and I could slide the mech in and out with positional repeatability. However, the issue with this solution was that the 3/4 inch material plus the 3/8 spacing in the rails placed the drop panel 1 1/8 inches away from the wall flat, and the portrait set back too far that it didn't look right in the opening. It was obvious that it was a drop panel. I needed a different approach, but this approach gave me an idea. Ultimately, this is the approach that worked. I milled 1x4 stock on my router table to create a 3/4 inch rabbet on the edge of the board for the rails to sit onto. By making multiple passes on the router table, I dialed in the desired space to ensure the portrait and the plexiglass could move freely between the wall flat and the drop panel. Additionally, these 1x4s provide a reference edge for the rails, allowing the mech to be removed and reattached to the wall flat in the correct position. With the mech attached to the wall flat, the next thing to work on is mounting the picture frame. The picture frame that I'm using is a standard 18-inch by 24-inch size, and it matches the one used for the pirate ship painting prop that was featured in a previous video. The picture frame should not be mounted using conventional hanging methods. Instead, it must be securely bolted flat against the wall to prevent dislodgement caused by the vibrations from the prop's mechanical operations. My first approach was to drill holes in the frame and install threaded inserts. However, I didn't notice the metal fasteners holding the corners together, and in retrospect, I should have drilled the holes into the top of the frame and avoided the corners. Then, when I screwed the inserts into the frame, the corner broke apart. This is also when I discovered the frame was not a solid piece of plastic. It was hollow inside, and the plastic composite material crumbled when the insert was screwed into the frame. This was not going to work. What I decided to do next was epoxy 1/4 screws into the corner of the picture frame.
Make sure that is good.
And fortunately I was able to epoxy the broken corner back together without the damage showing.
The washer will keep it flat. And I'll just let that set up overnight. Okay, we got 3 more to go.
When I placed the picture frame into the wall flat, I realized that it wasn't properly positioned, so I reluctantly drilled 3/4-inch holes into the wall flat to allow the picture frame to be centered and leveled. I used fender washers and nuts to hold the picture frame in place. After mounting the picture frame to the wall and reinstalling the mechanism, I noticed yet another issue. The 2 bolts at the bottom of the frame protruded into the drop panel's path. This would have jammed the prop and scratched the plexiglass. Fortunately, I noticed this before performing any tests. The 2 bolts at the top of the frame are fine, but what I realized is that the rest of the picture frame's edges are within the drop panel's path, so there are no places to bolt the picture frame without having the same issue. After giving this problem some thought, this is what I came up with. First, I removed the lower 2 bolts from the frame using a heat gun and a putty knife to scrape off the epoxy. I patched the 2 lower holes in the wall flat, but I will still use the top 2 holes to bolt the picture frame to the wall flat. I will use 6-inch bending plates to act as cleats to hold against the wall flat. To allow clearance for the frame to rotate into position with the cleats, the back of the wall needs to be rounded over. To do this, I'll use a trim router with a 1/4-inch roundover bit. I'm using the CA and wood glue method to bond a strip of wood to the picture frame. This wood is and must be the same thickness as the wall flat. I have the picture frame already set correctly in the wall flat, and I will clamp the wood strip to the picture frame.
So I'm going to get one here on the other end.
Next, I will punch and pre-drill the holes for the screws.
So do a punch.
Then attach the mending plates. The screws do go into the frame a little, so I was careful to make sure that the screws do not poke through the front. Fortunately, they did not. To install the picture frame, place the cleats over the bottom of the opening and tilt the frame up until the top bolts pass through the holes in the wall flat. Then on the reverse side, secure it with fender washers and nuts.
Okay, now it's time to put the picture of the pirate's portrait on the drop panel. And what I've done is I've tried to, my pencil slipped, but I tried to mark off the general area. And since I won't really know the exact alignment, I want to make sure that I can position this pirate wherever I need to. And for that, I'm going to use these J hooks or J clips. And they're about 1/4 of an inch to hold the foam board and the plexiglass front, like this. So I plan to put 2 in the bottom and 2 in the middle. Okay, let's try to position the pirate portrait into the here into this. I see here we're going to have to the edge is a little more finicky. So I'm going to put these Z-clips here on the top, and I'm going to put one, let's see here, maybe one here, and maybe one there. Okay, so that doesn't look too bad on the bottom and the right side, but on the left side I can see that it's being held in place. I need to raise it up a little bit more. Okay, so what happened just now, the plastic fell out of the clips holding up the portrait here. I'm having second thoughts about how I'm going to mount the picture onto the drop panel. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a, it turns out that I need to have 2 thicknesses of the masonite board is the perfect thickness for the poster and the foam core that it's mounted on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this big piece of plexiglass that I have. It's a little bit scratched up, but I'll need to find a good way to mount it. And then I'll cut it to the width of the and the height of the drop panel. So that way, this will be perfectly covering the entire thing, no matter from which direction you look at it. What I'm doing is I'm gluing up the horizontal bottoms, and I've measured it so that I've roughly got 2 inches on either side of this. So what I've done is I have two of these. One's longer than the other. This little tab right here will slide in here. This will give me the ability to make an adjustment. So this is kind of crazy. I'm just going to use my old beat up workbench. I'm just going to set the depth of my track saw, and I found out that I could cut this plexiglass straight. So I'm going to line up the edges here, and I've already got a groove in my workbench. I'll try not to put too many grooves in it, but here we go. Wow, it's taken a lot of time to get to this spot, but so I built this frame that goes all the way around, and then I have these 2 inner pieces, and what that allows me to do is that allow me to slide this picture left or right, here or here, and that will get me the centering of the portrait. Also, the black and the black drop panel with the black, with these black pieces in here, will blend in together. Now, I had an incident with the plastic. As I was drilling it out, it all cracked. I was able to save the pieces and super glue them back together again. I'm just going to put this on the lower corner like this. This way, the entire portrait will be behind the glass. The fact that there's a mistake of it breaking over here is down the bottom. This will be, the frame will cover from about here on over, so you're not going to see this. And I'm going to put it at the bottom anyway. So since I have these little sliding pieces to go back and forth, once I find the location where that needs to be, I'll just drop a screw through there, and I'm going to try to figure out the best position that this will have. I'm just going to put a piece of tape off here a little bit, but I'm definitely going to put some tape on it. I'm going to pull the panel out of the drop panel. I'm going to pull the drop panel out of here. And then, okay, so now that I know that that's where I need to have this portrait, I'm going to slide that one in place. And I'm going to slide this one in place. Countersinking bit. So now I'm going to use a manual screwdriver because I do not want to have a repeat of it blowing out on me like it did last time. I need to at least get a couple started, and then that'll hold it in place for me to finish. And this is the only piece of plexiglass I have that's this size. I'd have to order some more. Last couple to go. I left the tape in there. So I pulled the tape off of there. It didn't stick, didn't rip. One tweak I'm going to have to make is that this plexiglass sticks out too far away from. I'm not going to screw that in with a screw gun. Not after all that stuff. I had to drill through the aluminum plate there at the top so that this screw can seat down all the way. Okay, let's plug in the power and air. Okay, that's working. Let's get the air. So this panel will close when I put the air on it. Of course, it's a low pressure test, so let's go around in front. Let's see what we got. I'd say that's a successful test.
This drop panel mech is finally finished after working out all the issues. The next video in this series, I will add the scary pirate that will lunge out of the picture frame, and you don't want to miss that video when it comes out, so please like and subscribe and ring the notification bell to be notified whenever I publish more videos. And if you have any insights or ideas about this project, please share them in the comment section below. Thanks for watching.